Well, the Wall Street Journal is now reporting that they believe the United States will completely collapse by next year. We're going to be going over that headline. MSNBC has guest analyst on saying buy guns, barbed wire, and farmland. More and more people are sounding just like Gerald Celente, who's been predicting exactly what's happening right now for at least the last 6 to 7 years with precision. He called it in 2008. He said by 2010 the stimulus would have run out. By the middle of 2010 it would be clear that the establishment knew full well what was happening. That's now unfolding. And I have in incredible news here, we actually got the MSNBC script for the Rise of the New Right special they're going to be airing over and over again starting next Wednesday, hosted by Chris Matthews. They lied to me, but I knew they were lying. I told them, I said, this will be me cut into neo-Nazis and militias, and you will demonize Ron Paul and Rand Paul. And they said, no, we're just profiling you, and it's all friendly. We want to know the Tea Party. Well, I have the script. None of what I said is in there. Basically, it's all distorted. Nothing about reaching out to the controlled left, explaining to them that, you know, the false left-right paradigm. None of it. It is worse than I thought. And the article is up on prisonplanet.com. MSNBC hit piece smears Tea Party as neo-Nazis. This is so important. And so we're going to get Gerald Celente's take on that, on the economy, on the Iran situation, the Israeli flotilla, all of it. Really, Gerald Celente needs no introduction. I can look at our prisonplanet.tv numbers, our web streaming numbers, just the phone calls we get, the YouTube channel. This is the most popular guest we have on a monthly basis. Sometimes we have a Charlie Sheen on, or a Willie Nelson, or a Jesse Ventura, once every 3-4 months or so, or a couple times a year. That will have more viewers or listeners. But as our regular guest, people really appreciate the straight talk of Gerald Celente, and he really doesn't need any introduction. But he is the Trends Research Institute, founded in 1980. TrendsResearch.com has a long, illustrious bio. Find out more at TrendsResearch.com or in the past interviews we've done with him at PrisonPlanet.com and Infowars.com. Gerald, so much is happening. So much is unfolding. Good to have you here with us.
No, thanks for having me, Alex.
A lot going on. I want to get into the economy first, but what is your take on the MIAC report, the Homeland Security reports demonizing patriots, gun owners? Now I've got the New York Times where they're cracking down on Amish, trying to take their property, saying it's not good for the environment, that their cows are defecating, that that's not normal now. I mean, you cannot make this up. This is a full-out assault on anyone who wants to be self-sufficient.
I've said this before, that in the mainstream media and a number of these talk show blowhards out there, they keep calling what's going on in America socialism, the ones that don't like Obama. We've made it very clear that the merger of state and corporate powers, by definition, is called fascism. So what we're seeing is, first we're seeing the merger of state and corporate powers like never before, with the whole guise of the too big to fails. And look at the facts. You go back to the early 1990s, the top banks, the top 6 banks, had about 15% of the action out there. Now, the top 6 banks control 65% of all the financial assets in the United States. So as we become more fascist, what you're seeing now is the squeezing of the little people. Oh, those dangerous Amish, you have to really watch out for them. You never know when their horse and buggies will be taking over another town. And it squeezed the little people at every end. Look what they're doing to the small farmers, making it almost impossible for them to compete as they're becoming more popular. Look at the numbers. What is the IRS doing? They're cracking down on the little people as they're turning a blind eye to the big corporations. So that's what's going on. And as you pointed out, how the NBC did a snow job on you, they do it with everybody, in making the Tea Party look like as though it's a right-wing fanatical movement of right-wing nuts. And it's the same story. Let's go back over the history. In 2007, in the Trends Journal, our top trend for that year, while Bush was president, was that we were going to see the emergence of major tax revolts. What did they do? They ignored it. In 2009, the first Tea Parties and protests, tax protests, what did they do in the mainstream media? They ridiculed it. They said it was going nowhere. And then, as they could no longer turn a blind eye to it, and it started gaining momentum, what do they do next? They demonize it. So it's a very familiar pattern. We know where they're going, and they're not going to be able to stop it. It has a life of its own.
Well, that's my next point. We see 3 weeks of a hoax saying that Rand Paul wants to get rid of the Civil Rights Act, which he never even talked about, is not on his platform. He said, no, I don't. And they said, no, yes, you do. And his approval rating went up. In one poll was 16%, it went up to 20%. Another poll was 20%, it went up to 25%. He gained between 3 to 6 points in a whole index of polls after 3 weeks of 24/7, basically saying he was the second coming of Adolf Hitler. So what does that say to Chris Matthews and others? That's what I told Politico. I said, look, if you want to hurt Rand Paul, endorse him. You guys are shooting an empty gun. More and more, there's less and less people that believe a word that comes out of your stinking mouth.
Well, of course, it's the same old Washington Beltway circle jerk. Turn them on. It's the same guys over and over, and the same tired old faces saying the same old things. The only people that are listening to them are themselves. The whole nation is going in another direction. Again, we'll only stick with the facts. They ridiculed the Tea Party. They said it would go nowhere. The lefties hate them. They've turned them into, again, a stereotype that does not encompass the full meaning of the movement. So just as they do, Alex, when there's a mass demonstration like the ones they just had in Greece, or the ones they have in the U.S., they throw in the agents provocateurs to make it seem as though the whole thing is nothing but an anarchist movement. They're doing the same thing by demonizing the Tea Party. Sure, there are lunatics in there, unlike the respectable lunatics in the Democratic Party, like President Obama, who has sent more troops into Afghanistan, who has expanded the mass murder in Pakistan. Oh, well, they're respectable because, as you've heard me say, they're among the elites, the Harvard, Princeton, Yale, bullets, bombs, and banks group. They only do things with pinkies up in a dignified way. They kill you with drones. God forbid. They would never have an AK-47. So what they do is they make it seem as though the people of the movement are all out of their minds. They're all head to the hills with pork and beans and barricade yourself in because the end of the world is coming movement, rather than admitting to the depth and breadth of this movement. It's not going to be the Tea Party that really brings forth the change, but it's the first element of something very big. I've said this over and over again, and I'll say it again. That's right.
It's the same sword to pop out to show us that the country is very sick.
Yeah, again, it's the beginning of the Second American Revolution. It's underway. The Chris Matthews, the Obermans, the rest of them are not going to stop it. It's happening. They can ridicule it all they want. Again, it's the same Washington Beltway circle jerk. I go into these websites, the liberal ones like Raw Story. Oh, they're so proud of calling themselves progressives. Progressives, every day in there they have what Jon Stewart said, what Stephen Colbert said. How about what Bozo the Clown said? They're clowns, that's it. And these are the ones they look up to. So the liberals look up to the clowns, the Colberts, and the Stewarts, and they make fun of the rest.
It's incredible, and then the right wing thinks Sarah Palin's going to save them, but that's not going to happen. And the other good news is every incumbent, whether Republican or Democrat, whether it's Arlen Specter or Grayson, they are all being thrown out by the more extreme. The more extreme you are, according to mainstream media, because they're up on the hill like Buddha pronouncing what reality is, the more extreme you are, the more the mainstream media demonizes you, the faster you get put into office.